What was it then that made you start doing a fashion blog?
For me, I'd read a lot of the controversy about Belle de Jour in 2006, and I liked that idea of being able to write in an anonymous space. To me, it was quite exciting. That's how I first really heard about blogs. I had no idea what a fashion blog was. There certainly weren't any outstanding, prolific, media-savvy fashion bloggers kicking around then, so I had no template like people do now when I started. Literally, it was meant to be a journal of my life, and I would be lying if I said I didn't hope that somebody might stumble across it one day and go, goodness, you're an extraordinary writer, here, have a $10 billion book deal. But I wasn't really kind of thinking that was going to happen, especially because in the whole of 2007 I had about 30,000 hits, which I get in like 3 days now. So,
and I think when you start a blog, especially then, you kind of, as much as you might think, oh, wouldn't it be great if, you're almost just writing for yourself and you don't really think anyone's reading it, or do you?
No, and I think I still have that problem these days, that I do sort of forget that people are really reading it. And I know that my family and friends and my long-term blogger friends like you, Navaz was the first person to ever comment on my blog, so I'm thrilled that she was asked to do this today.
I think you're the first to comment on mine as well.
I know, we love each other, it's great. And I sometimes go to events or launches and people say, how's the dog? How's your sister? And I have to take a moment to go, oh my God, they read it on my blog. So I still forget that. It's very easy because you're writing into the ether. It's not like it comes out on a newspaper that's tangible.
Personally, with me, I now see my blog as PR for myself. So I very recently sort of outed myself and went public for the same kind of reasons, because I just thought there's always opportunities out there, and if you're anonymous and people can't put your face to what you're talking about, then you're going to lose out on a lot of things. So for me, my blog is pretty much the same as it always was, but it's could also be a vehicle to show work that I've done or projects I'm working on, and of course then that means you're going to get more opportunities. Then it can also become, and I'm seeing this happening with quite a lot of bloggers, a point where you then become a bit of a personality. People hire you for your taste or for your personality or your point of view. And I know you've been doing a bit more of that kind of stuff as well.
I know, oddly, in the last 3 days, I've had 2 approaches from a certain kind of accessory for me to collaborate with a designer to produce an LLG XYZ product, both in the same arena, which is quite odd. I hadn't really ever thought I'd be going down that route.
That is quite bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, especially the same product in the same week from 2 separate companies. So I haven't quite decided whether that's something I should go down or not. But it is odd because really my blog was supposed to be what yours is, which is a place to get out and put places to put content that I had no other place to put. Pictures I'd taken or things I wanted to write that no one else was going to commission. That's what my blog was for, to a degree. And it was an advert for me as a writer. It was never meant to be a vehicle in itself. And that's what surprised me most about blogging, I think.
When you do your consultancy work with brands, I mean, I think this is quite an interesting point. Brands that want to reach out to bloggers, obviously you do quite a lot of this. So, and I know that brands are getting it more now, but there are still sort of niggles where they're kind of not quite getting it. What would you say those areas are? What would your advice be?
Angel Jackson was a great case in point. They just sent me their lookbook, and it was a really charming letter showing they'd read the book, read my blog, and just a sort of hello, we'd like to say hello. And I very rarely write up press releases or lookbooks, but I just liked what they did and I loved their price point. So I ran a little piece about how great I thought their bags were, but I made sure I went to Selfridges and looked at them and felt them and checked the quality before I wrote about them. And then put the piece up. 2 months later, they got nominated for the BSC Vogue Fund. So I ran a piece going, yeah, great taste. And we just carried on chatting, and then I think I was on Twitter about 6 months later talking about buying an iPad, and PR was on Twitter too and said, hey, I think our Continental Clutch fits the iPad. Why don't I send you one? You've been so supportive over the past year. And I thought that was a really nice gesture. They weren't like throwing stuff at me. They weren't trying to buy my support. It was just an organic thank you. I loved it. I took a photo, me headless holding it in a field in France. It's kind of bizarre, but it was a great image. And they sold out of the bag overnight, and it is still on back order 6 months later. So we win. Everyone won from that relationship. We have a really strong organic relationship that grew over a year. And that's kind of like how I like to build it, just slow and steady. What would be a good way of doing social media for a small company? Never ever trust a social media expert who says you have to be on all the different platforms, because it's just patently untrue. Things like Gowalla and Foursquare, the geolocation services like Facebook Places, are still in such infancy. For a very small brand, it's probably waiting till there's a kind of a tipping point with those. And not all brands need to be on Twitter. They just don't. Facebook is really useful, I think, as a customer service tool. Twitter's great for having conversations, and it depends what your brand's good at. I mean, I think it's obviously you should register a Twitter handle and register a Facebook page so they exist so no one else comes and domain squats on you. But I actually think blogging for small brands isn't actually enormously effective. It takes quite a lot of time, quite a lot of energy. It's not really something your intern should be doing for you, which is a mistake a lot of people make. And I actually advise a lot of my brands to use Tumblr now.
Why is that?
I think Tumblr is an amazingly effective tool, and people who use Tumblr are raving about it. I mean, I don't know if you all know what Tumblr is. Basically, it's the equivalent of a photo blog, so you upload pictures, really, rather than words, although you can do little quotes and bits of video on there. But the way it really differs from a normal blog is that instead of leaving comments like you would with a blog, people can re-blog your photo, video, or quote. And so I think Tumblr is a really time-effective way for brands to get out, because you can post pictures of your workshop, or your studio, or your store, or your product, and you can just keep, and loading a picture takes 25 seconds. And I think that is what small brands should be putting the effort into, not a traditional WordPress or Blogger blog.
In 4 years, from 2007 to now, it's obviously blogging's gone, moved on so much. So in 4 years from now, where do you think it would be? Do you know have you got any inkling of how it's going to change?
If somebody had told me 4 years ago that I would be designing a window for Dolce & Gabbana, sitting here being interviewed about blogging, or in fact, signing with an agent, not for a book, but for endorsement deals, I would have told them they were on crack. So I have no idea what someone could tell me now about what's happening in 4 years' time.
In 1 year, what about in 1 year's time?
God, to be honest, it's been such an extraordinary journey. Just that year's hiatus I took when I was at the Wall Street Journal and coming back to blogging, where I had left blogging as this amazing, independent, quiet insider secret. When I came back and it was suddenly this enormous, great industry, that was just in 1 year. I hope that the quality of blogs improves. I hope that people understand more about how not to be exploited, and I take that both for brands and for bloggers, that everyone starts to understand that if there are commercial opportunities, how to go about those in an ethical and manner in a way that's good for each party. And clearly, I just want to take over the world.